And hello, everybody. Welcome to Friday night's after show. I'm Zev Shalev. It's so good to be with you tonight with the fabulous Kimberly Johnson. Thanks for being here tonight, Kimberly. She's from the Start Me Up podcast. Thank you very much for being here tonight.
Thanks for inviting me back.
Well, it's great to have you back. We got abandoned, I guess, by both Greg and LP, who had serious other things they had to deal with. So here we are on quite a big news night. I mean, it turns out to be, the kind of news day you might want to remember for the rest of your life, or you might remember you for the rest of your life. Because, these verdicts, I mean, I remember OJ as one of the verdicts that are just seared in my brain forever. Because it's, these days are such, the days when you get verdicts, they're statements on the entire culture. They're a statement on where we are politically, culturally, in terms of race relations, in terms of everything. These kind of seminal verdicts, and today felt like one of those verdicts. It wasn't surprising to me in any way whatsoever. I certainly felt like all the way through Kyle Rittenhouse was going to get off, and that is a problem. But it doesn't take away any of the reality of it all, which is it's awful. It's awful that we live in a country where someone can commit a crime like that and get away with it, or crimes like that and get away with it. Well, what were you doing at the time, and tell me about your reaction?
Well, just like you, I'm not surprised. I actually did have a little bit of hope, I figured that I would be wrong, but I figured that because they say when juries come back quickly with a verdict, it's usually bad news for the prosecution, and so for the defendant, right? Yeah. For the defendant.
Yes.
And it's defendant. So I figured, okay, well, maybe, because I knew it was 6 counts, but I knew it was taking some time. So I thought maybe they were deliberating, and it was like, who knew? Anyway, today I saw it was trending verdict, and I started looking at the feed and waiting, and I could see people saying, okay, they've reached a verdict. And then, of course, we saw what happened. And it was just incredibly disappointing. It wasn't surprising, especially with that judge, but it was absolutely, and like you said, it's like the right has made him a hero. And this is not about politics, but it is, because this child basically went into a protest with a gun looking for trouble. Clearly, you don't walk into a place with an AR-15 if you're not looking for trouble.
Not across state lines, in a place that you don't really live in. I mean, it just seems though all of it is strains credulity. It took 3 days for them to basically come to this conclusion, so it was fairly quick. But they did go back and look at some of the video, and they assessed it. But the truth of it is, what it reveals to us, which is what we've always known about America, is that white privilege is still very much alive and well in this country. And white privilege entails getting away with stuff that other people can't get away with. Certainly in terms of the courts. I mean, this was an all-white court. You had a judge that was white, an all-white jury. I know none of the victims were non-white, but at least there was at least there should have been some sort of diversity, because it even though it wasn't a case involving black people, it still involved black people, because it was about that. It was about race relations. It was about that whole uprising that happened last year, which to me is still such a major factor that we need to address. Is why did we have that major uprising last year? I mean, I know there were deaths, and I understand the reaction to those deaths, but they were also being amplified by the GOP and amplified by the Trump administration, who were in the middle of a campaign, trying to win a campaign, stoking divisions, stoking race spheres. And that's what you get. You get, conflict. You get Kyle Rittenhouse, basically.
Right. Yeah, you absolutely do. And I mean, the protesters were peaceful. Nobody else died that night. The only people who died were shot by Kyle. And so, and then we saw he got bail, and then he's standing with the Proud Boys making the white supremacy sign, which used to be the OK sign. And it's very clear what's going on here, and it's very upsetting. And I mean, you mentioned OJ. OJ and Bill Cosby. Well, Bill Cosby spent time in jail, but then he got off on a technicality. He basically admitted what he did, and the technicality is what got him off. Also, with OJ, I mean, I'm not going to speak to exactly why the jurors came to that decision, and eventually he did go to jail for some other crime. But those are black men, but they were beloved, wealthy black men who had access to, obviously, lots of lawyers, lots of money, and most black people in this country, just everyday regular people, they don't have that money that they can go to. They don't have fame that they can turn to. They're just everyday citizens trying to get by, and they are not being treated fairly.
In fact, we saw this week that two people who had been convicted of the death of Malcolm X, their convictions were overturned this week after spending a long time in jail. I mean, that's what happens to Black people who don't have the power or the money to go to courts to fight them in the way that many people do, and in the way that, frankly, Kyle Rittenhouse was also supported by a lot of really wealthy conservative funders. I want to play the verdict as it happened in court today, because people are saying these are not real tears that he's shedding and he's not really emotional, but I believe he is. I mean, his lawyer certainly indicates that he's got PTSD, and his reaction both on the court stand last week when he was testifying, but also here, does look to me like PTSD. It's got the classic symptoms of PTSD, which is, just another tragedy to pile onto this already awful story. So let's take a look at the verdict and see what happened as the 5 cases were adjudicated.
We, the jury, find the defendant, Kyle H. Rittenhouse, not guilty. As to the 4th count of the information, Anthony Huber, we, the jury, find the defendant, Kyle H. Rittenhouse, not guilty. As to the 5th count of the information, Gage Grosskreutz, we, the jury, find the defendant, Kyle H. Rittenhouse, not guilty.
So then he just collapses to the ground there.
These are unanimous verdicts? Is there anyone who does not agree with the verdicts as read? Would you wish the jury pulled?
And then, he gets pulled back up by his attorney. There's a hug there with his other attorney. I mean, he certainly looked emotional. And as one would imagine, he'd be emotional on a day like today, regardless. I mean, this would not be an easy thing for any 18-year-old to deal with. I mean, it's certainly a horrible
I believe his reaction is legit. Yeah, I think his reaction is legit because he's so relieved. It reminds me of like a mother who's lost her child, and then you find your child, and you're just like, oh my God, I'm so relieved. I think he's so relieved that he's not going to go to jail.
And clearly he does have PTSD. I mean, even just the act of killing somebody as he did would give you PTSD. I mean, never mind the trial and the pressure of this public campaign that he's had. Now, I mean, people are saying, why do we care about Kyle's feelings? Why is the white media caring so much about Kyle's feelings? To be frank, I don't know why we care so much about his feelings, because, there's other people here that are more important that died on that night. And we should be paying attention to them. And we will later in this hour as we continue talking about what happened. But just to keep the conversation going on about what happened today in court, there were 5 charges, as you mentioned. One was intentional homicide. That was the most serious one. And that would have carried a mandatory life sentence. But he was also charged with first-degree reckless homicide, first-degree attempted homicide, and first-degree reckless endangerment of public safety. And then there was another firearms charge that was also dismissed. So that's a lot of things to be acquitted of. I mean, it certainly was not a simple case of just one event. The prosecutors claimed Kyle Rittenhouse was a chaos tourist. It's a term I haven't heard before. That he traveled to Kenosha looking for trouble. It's a good term. But and the facts, I think that's what he is. I mean, it certainly looks to me like he had no reason to be there. He did consciously go across state lines with an AR-15, and he did shoot people that he didn't need to.
Yeah, it was an illegally purchased AR-15 as well.
Well, there's confusion about that. There is confusion about whether you're allowed to own AR-15s when you're 18, when you're 17 in Kenosha. I mean, I don't know if that's the case. Milwaukee must have different gun rules, but that's a very weird rule to let 17-year-olds run around with AR-15s. It's certainly not something you'd want to be crossing state lines with. I'm sure that's illegal. But we're left with the kind of I get a sense. I don't know how you feel about this. We're sort of left with we just don't really have justice in America. There's a sense of injustice from all of this. You know what happened. We know he got off, but it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel like the verdict was accurate or reflected what really happened, nor does it feel like it would be meted out in the same way if the accused was someone of a different race.
Exactly. And I mean, I heard when this started, because they didn't have any Black jurors or any jurors of color, it was like, oh, well, it might be biased. It's like, well, white people can be biased. Yeah. So, I mean, you have a jury filled with white people that can also be biased, but we never take a look at that. And then I also, the way that the judge conducted himself and this trial, not allowing the protesters to be called protesters, that they were called whatever, criminals or whatever he allowed.
Rioters, protesters, people like that. Those are the terms you would use,
or victims. They weren't allowed to be called victims.
That's correct. Yes, right.
And so you have a jury who's listening to this judge, and I mean, people regardless of if they're racist or biased, just take that out of the equation for just 1 minute. Oftentimes people look at judges or anybody as an authority figure. It's like when Trump was president, they follow the lead of your leaders. And so he wasn't allowing certain information. And I guess what they had to go on and what was, I think that if I were in that jury, I don't think they would have let me on that jury because
probably not.
I thought he was guilty from the get-go.
Yeah.
But still, it's the idea of, I don't know exactly. I didn't listen to the entire, everything all day long. I didn't watch it. I don't even know if you could watch it, but I saw the excerpts like everybody else did. But based on what they were told, I think, they thought they were coming to a decision based on the rules, because I sat on a jury once. It was so long ago.
Yeah. Tell me about that story. I'm really interested in jury stories because I always find them so fascinating and revealing. Tell me about what kind of case it was.
Actually, mine wasn't so fascinating. It was it was really stupid, actually. It was a domestic argument. And it was just this married couple who had a big argument. And I don't remember the exact, the specifics of it, because I think I was like 19 or 20. I don't know how old. I was really young. And I just remember, there's certain instructions that we got that I felt like, oh, well, you can't pay attention to this thing that is there, but you can't pay attention to it. So when a jury is instructed that they can't pay attention to A, even though A might be a vital piece of the case.
Right. This happened in this case. It happened in Rittenhouse case.
Yeah.
They weren't allowed to see the 4K drone footage, which I think is, very damning footage. So absolutely. It's very weird to sort of be told, you got to block out this piece of information from your mind when you know it exists. What happened?
And jurors are going to take that lead.
Yeah, absolutely.
Pardon me?
Did your jury convict the accused in your case?
I think it was like the husband and the wife.
Okay.
And I think the husband was the one who, did the wrongdoing. I mean, it wasn't an abusive thing. I don't remember what it was, but it was just a big fight that they had. And I think we found that the husband was guilty of whatever he was accused of.
It is really hard to find consensus amongst 12 people, I have to say. And the fact that they were able to find consensus among this group of people to say that he was all not guilty of all these things, that's a hard thing to do in 3 days. I want to remind people that we have a new narrative player. So if you're watching on any of our social feeds, you can go to narrative.org/TV. That's narrative.org/TV. And then you'll see the same thing, but you'll have interactive features, meaning you'll be able to talk to us and tell us what you thought about the Kyle Rittenhouse verdict. Plus, you'll be able to engage in a poll. We'll think of a poll question in just a few minutes. And we'll even, in the future, you'll be able to do some shopping. Isn't that nice? You'll be able to do shopping while you're watching Narrative. I don't know what you'll be buying, but, we'll think of something. We have a Narrative shop with cool mugs and things. We should get you one, Kimberly, because you're such a good sport for being here tonight. We have so much more to talk about. I want to fit in a commercial break. When we return, we're going to talk about the worst named bill in the entire world. Build Back Better. Whatever. Biff, Baff, Bob. I don't know. It's all here. Apparently, it's going to be transformational for the whole country. So all of that is coming up next. Plus, your thoughts on Kyle Rittenhouse in the chat at narrative.org/TV. We'll be right back, everybody. Hey, everyone. Thank you for supporting Narrative and for supporting our sponsors. If you're a regular viewer to the show, you may have noticed I wear similar things every day. That's because I can be sure it matches everything else I'm wearing. Now I can stop thinking about what to wear and just embrace the radically efficient Mack Weldon Daily Wear System. The Daily Wear System is a selection of clothes rooted in smart design, made with performance fabrics, and built to work together. From breathable t-shirts and polos to stylish button-ups and shorts, underwear, and beyond. Mack Weldon makes it easy for you to dress for work, leisure, and play, or wherever your holiday season might take you. I'm wearing the Ace sweatpants right now. It's available in a variety of colors. And don't get misled by the term sweatpants. These are structured and tailored and can easily be worn to informal meetings and also on travel. I've also opted for the Pima long sleeve t-shirt. The Pima cotton is really soft and you can wear it on its own or with a blazer. Again, everything is made to match and it comes in black too. That saves me time and I can focus on the things that matter, like the news. All that by wearing Mack Weldon's Daily Wear System. Buy Mack Weldon or products from the Daily Wear System this holiday season for 20% off your first order. Visit mackweldon.com/narrative. That's NARATIV and enter promo code narrative. That's mackweldon.com/narrative. promo code narrative for 20% off. Mack Weldon, radically efficient wardrobing. Indeed it is. Indeed it is. It really is incredible. They do good stuff. So let me tell you a little bit of what people are saying on the chat here. Let's look at some of the comments. Yes, one of these people is saying, let's take this message across here, and I think this will turn on. Oh, maybe it doesn't. I got to do this. Now it'll turn on. No, maybe it doesn't. Now it'll turn on. There it is. I thought the jurors would see through it. They didn't. I'm not quite sure which one that's referring to. But yeah,
I was hoping.
Yeah, there's lots of F that judge
seeing
and
through.
Do that. Yeah. So go ahead.
No, I thought that the jurors would also see through all of what the judge was doing and the ridiculousness of the defendant, the lawyers defending him, but they didn't. So. Yeah,
there's an interesting comment here from someone who's talking about does this actually work? Here you go. That you can buy cigarettes at 17, can't buy cigarettes at 17, and that you can't do other things at 17. I believe you can't vote at 17 either, but apparently you can walk around with, can't drink, that's for sure. But killing people apparently is fine, says Marie over here. It's really interesting that's, in fact, some of the weird takeaway of American gun laws is that you can do things with guns at younger ages. You can go to fight wars with guns, but you can't do a lot of other things in the world when you're that age. It's kind of a stunning thing that America has this gun problem and these gun laws that looks like that. He also said, Marie saying he also rejected evidence of video, the T-shirt. I know he rejected the evidence of the video, but I'm not sure what the T-shirt was. Oh, I remember that Kyle Rittenhouse had the T-shirt that was it a Proud Boys T-shirt or was it a?
Yes, right. Yeah, I think it was something with F. I can't remember what it. But yeah.
Right. Yes, something AF.
Free something or free something AF. Like free as Free as
we're actually allowed to swear on the show, but our chat apparently the chat apparently is censoring people. So every time they're doing it, they're getting stars and hash marks. I didn't watch the whole thing, says Guilio. But the fact that he brought the gun to the protest makes me think he should have been held responsible. Yeah. I mean, what a 17-year-old is doing this? What 17-year-old is going across the state line, even just to be a medic? I mean, the idea that that's really what's going on is
that's
nonsense. I mean, which mom is letting a 17-year-old go, honey, you want to go into a BLM protest? Go ahead. I don't think that's happening.
With your
I just don't
AR-15.
see it. Yeah, right. Yeah. That's not happening. So I feel like the entire, the plausibility of the argument just seems so ludicrous, but they just seem to look past that because what? He said that it was self-defense, or he felt that they got threatened. I mean, that he felt threatened. It's an imagined threat that he had. He didn't have a real, I didn't gather that he had a real threat. Maybe he did. I didn't see the entire video, but certainly didn't feel that way to me.
It's from what I understand. I think the protest. There was some guy going after him with a skateboard because I didn't see this whole thing. I've seen a picture of it, but I think the guy with the skateboard, saw a guy with an AR-15, and I don't know what Kyle did, but this guy came at him.
Wasn't that after he shot somebody? I think after he shot somebody, then the guy went.
Enough about it.
Yeah, I mean that's when I think he went in with his skateboard. I think that's which makes sense, to some extent.
Yes.
And then it also says check his socials. Young and easy target for radicalization. That's what someone else is saying here, which is true. I mean, you looked at his his TikTok account saying all I want to be is, I don't remember the exact handle, but something to the effect of, all I want to be is be famous or destined to be famous.
Wow.
Which I mean, most teenagers might think these days. I don't know. A lot of teenagers might think. But it's not something you want to do and then land up in the situation he was in.
Not for murder. You want to be famous for murder.
No, absolutely not. The jurors followed the letters of the law, so we must change the letters, says Joanne. I think that's a very valid point. And I think,
that is the most valid point.
There was a real controversy today about what Biden said right afterwards. I mean, he issued two statements. One was a shorter statement on Twitter, and I think he came back later with a slightly longer statement, which is an indication of, oops, I probably screwed up and I shouldn't have, I shouldn't have said what I said there. But it's not that the statement was biased, but people took it in a very unusual way. They sort of felt like he was supporting the judgment, even though he never said that. What he actually said was, let me see if I can pull it up here for us. While the verdicts in Kenosha will leave many Americans feeling angry and concerned, myself included, we must acknowledge that the jury has spoken. That is not saying that he agrees with the verdict, in my opinion. I think it's just saying, but that's the way people have taken it. People have taken it as a supportive statement about the verdict and thinking that it was the right thing. I don't think that's what Joe Biden is trying to get at here. But I
don't either.
But there is anger. I mean, there's a lot of people who are very justifiably angry tonight because they voted in some change. They thought they'd voted in some change with Joe Biden. And yet here we are still doing a lot of the same things, the same court rulings. We had that one court case with the policeman in the Floyd case where there was a conviction. But other than that, we haven't had justice really change. And certainly are looking at the way...
Well, it's not, I mean, he hasn't even been president for a year, and the president doesn't have anything to do. It's lawmakers.
Right.
We have to elect. That's why everybody who's getting so upset about Biden not doing enough for them. First of all, it hasn't been a year. There are all kinds of things that have been beneficial that Biden has done. But in order to see real change in the court, you have to, this judge was elected too, by the way. He was an elected, not an appointed judge.
That's interesting.
But yeah, and that what that means is not enough people show up. I mean, I know it is Wisconsin, and okay, but still, this judge was elected. People had a say in who sat on that bench. And they did choose him because maybe a bunch of people didn't show up to vote or weren't even aware that there was an election for a judge. But you can't put this on Joe Biden. He can't just walk in and say, "Oh, the system has changed now." This is something that takes time, and it takes going and electing people who will write legislation that will get the change going.
Absolutely.
And as far as what I want to say that, I mean, I don't think I can understand that people are angry. And we are living in this social media society where, we have knee-jerk reactions to everything. There's a lot of things that happen that aren't fair and we have no control of. I'm not angry at him for what he's saying. I totally understand he's the president. He didn't sit on the jury. I don't think the system worked there was no justice. But the way that this is, like the person who said the letter has to be changed, we have to change. Like, for instance, I wrote something on my Patreon page that white men rape babies and women, and then white male judges let them go with no time served whatsoever. There was a horrible situation of a wealthy man who raped literally a baby. And the judge said, well, he's a wealthy guy. He's not going to be used to life in prison. So he doesn't have to go to prison.
Yeah, I remember that
So
case.
we have to get rid of, there are so many white male judges. And it's not to say that every white male judge is a bad guy, but we need more diversity. We
absolutely need more diversity. And we need a system that doesn't award or reward only white men as getting things. I mean, it's just, it's not even that they're necessarily biased, but if white men are getting all these positions of power, you internalize that. You imagine that, well, they must be good. They must be better people because they've got all these jobs. Right. And in fact, they aren't. In a lot of cases, they're just the most corrupt people we've ever seen, as it's been coming to light over the last few years. Yeah, it is by design. And certainly when you look at what happened to Kyle, and this is the thing which gets me, what happened to Kyle. Well, Kyle did something, obviously. He's responsible for it. But he's also a result of a really awful political climate that we created last year, that Donald Trump basically created last year. Because as they were heading into that election, it was clear that Donald Trump was going to lose. And what they tried to do is get all these white suburban moms worked up about safety in their neighborhoods, safety in places where there are swing states, like in Kenosha, in those kinds of places in Wisconsin or wherever the swing states might be. They were trying to make it seem unsafe. So there were these events that happened, and these events, which sometimes included deaths, or in Blake's shooting, the Blake shooting in Wisconsin, it created a reaction. Each of those things created a reaction. Remember, there was something in Minneapolis. There was a big fire that happened in Minneapolis weeks after the George Floyd thing happened. And so tends to be a murder of some sort, and then that was inflamed by another big riot or a big fire or a big shooting like we had in Kenosha. And so into that milieu of events are these forces, are these election forces that are pressuring people into going into the streets. There are people on both sides, I would say, pressuring people, but certainly was the benefit of all of this would have gone to Donald Trump and his administration, because that would have been the people who got in the votes had these women been scared enough to not vote for Joe Biden, which is basically what they were trying to get them to do. So, it's not you can blame all these people. You can blame Kyle Rittenhouse and you can blame everybody else that's there, because they are to blame, because they were the ones pulling the trigger. But we can also really blame the politicians and the system, which keep putting us into these positions of conflict. And of course, when you put people in positions of conflict, things happen. And if you ignite a match when that's happening, you're going to get a fire. And that's exactly what we've seen again and again and again. And what worries me is that we become so polarized about absolutely everything. That's Paul Gosar can go in front of the the House yesterday and basically say, hey, it's okay that I sent out a tweet showing me killing Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Joe Biden. It's okay to do that. In fact, I'm going to retweet it again. So he retweeted it afterwards, after he got censored. I mean, this is just not we've lost our sense of decency and we've lost our way. And you can't blame the little guys on the ground. And I am blaming Kyle Rittenhouse. I think he's a terrible person. It should never have happened. But, we have to look beyond that. In order to fix the system, we have to look much more beyond that. And I'd say the same thing for the Jan 6 insurrectionists. So, go ahead.
Yeah, and I'd like to just add that, Democrats are famous for when we don't get everything we want, it's like we're either going to punish or I'm not going to rubber stamp the Democratic Party. I'm going to, have a protest vote to show them. What that winds up in is Republicans get elected. And I'd like to go back to 2010 and 2014 in Obama's administration. I know there were some Democrats that either felt like, oh, well, we've got this Democratic president, he's black, and I don't have to worry about anything anymore, so I'm not going to show up and vote in 2010. Yeah. Or they were pissed at him because they didn't get every single thing they wanted in the ACA. And so it was kind of a punishment. What happened? Republicans got in. Tea Party got in. Take it to 2014. And it was the worst turnout in 84 years. We had a good turnout for the GOP, a horrible turnout for the Democrats. Now, imagine if Democrats would have supported and given Obama, or at least allowed him to keep a majority, how different things would be. The different law, and I'm not saying Democrats are perfect. I'm not saying that everything would be fixed and solved, but we would be living in a completely different country if Democrats would have showed up and vote. If they vote, obviously what we're seeing right now in the Democratic Party is they're trying to pass these bills, whether the names are stupid or not, they're trying to pass these bills that are going to help American people and, obviously make sure that our allies are behind us and we're in the good world standing. We can't do that when Republicans are in power because they screw everything up, and it's guaranteed. So for all those people out there who feel like, well, I'm just going to show the Democratic Party that I'm not giving them my support. Well, if you don't do it in 2022 and the Republicans gain control, they're never, ever, ever going to allow Democrats to win again.
Kimberly, I'm so glad you said that, because I feel exactly the same way. And all this, it seems to be fashionable to sort of take digs at Joe Biden, even though he's doing an incredible job. I mean, he's had the most incredible first year of any president ever. Yeah. I mean, he's passing so much incredible legislation and writing a country on a global scale that's really, coming back from a really difficult place. You can't say that Joe Biden is doing a bad job. You cannot say that. But there seems to be permission in our society to do that for some reason. And I'm not saying you can't criticize the president. Of course, feel free to criticize the president.
Oh, you should criticize everybody.
But, it strikes me as it's a game for people. It's like either they're trying to see if they can be as harsh on him as they were on Donald Trump, or they want to seem fair, or whatever it is that they're trying to do. But I don't think it's being very fair. And I think that the fact that, every time there's a slight bad move by the president of the United States, or that lately there's kind of a gleefulness in the media and a kind of a, like a gotcha moment. And it's like, why are you being gleeful about this?
I think it's by design.
Yeah.
I think it's by design. And I hate to say this because I don't want people to walk away feeling they can't trust our media. But I mean, you take a look at what CNN is doing, and it's really upsetting because they were trashing Kamala Harris while they were promoting Chris Christie all last week.
Wow.
And I feel like it's okay to criticize the president, no matter who the president is, no matter what side of the aisle they're on. But I think they're manufacturing stories about Joe Biden, like the fact that he uses profanity. Are you fucking kidding me? I mean, first of all, we knew he used profanity when he was with Obama, because he said this is a big fucking deal when they passed the ADA. And I mean, Trump swore all the time. He swore at his rallies. Nobody gives a shit if a president is going to use profanity. Yet we have, whether it's CNN or Politico or some of these, and they can put out good information, but at the same time, whether it's Washington Post, the New York Times, you get opinion, or you get opinion from people, which I think is sometimes unfair. But on top of it, especially with CNN, Jeff Zucker said he didn't see a problem with having Trumpers basically come on CNN. And what I worry about is, I worry that they say, all right, look, we might be moving toward fascism. So, I mean, the 1A should, the First Amendment should be on every journalist's mind. Mm-hmm. But I think what maybe some of these wealthy people are thinking, well, if we do move towards fascism, I want to make sure I'm okay. And so I'm going to appease and make these guys happy. Yeah.
Look, I mean, Zucker has been in Trump's pocket forever. And certainly during the 2016 election, it was clear that Zucker was operating on behalf of Donald Trump. And, they've been friends for a long time. They're running in the same circles. He helped his Apprentice show become a success when he was the president of NBC. Jeff Zucker is no friend to democracy. And the way, he was meant to leave last year and just didn't. But he was really there were plans for him to retire because of everything he'd done during the Trump years. All these terrible things that kept showing up about him introducing, Kissinger to Jared Kushner at a Time Warner event. All these things were just like, what are you doing? That's crazy. That's not legal. Yeah. It's legal, of course, but it's not, it's not right. It's not ethical. And so you've got, a guy who really pushed the presidency of Donald Trump when Donald Trump was an unknown candidate. I mean, basically, anytime Trump wanted to get on the air, he could get on because he called his friend Jeff Zucker, and then suddenly he was on CNN. He didn't have to do events, didn't have to do anything, and so the fact that he's still there is kind of stunning to me. And the fact that people at CNN walk around like there's nothing wrong and we'll just continue to do our job is also frightening. And I have lots of friends that work there, but that is not a place that could be considered a bastion of journalism anymore because of this one guy who's sitting there who's clearly pushing an agenda. And if what you're saying is true about Kamala and Chris Christie last week, I mean, Chris Christie is a disaster. Yeah. We all remember how terrible Chris Christie was as the governor of New Jersey. He cannot become close to the presidency. It would be absolutely horrific.
But you know what? I will say on the flip side of that, though, he's supposed to be on this rehabilitation tour for the GOP. Yeah. If the GOP, which I honestly don't think this, but if they believe Chris Christie is their guy, fucking bring it, because he doesn't have the charisma. As much as I don't like Donald Trump, Trump has charisma. Chris Christie does not have that charisma. No. I think they would be more likely to put up somebody like Ron DeSantis or Trump himself, which I don't think it's going to be Trump. It might be, but I don't think it will be. I think it'll be one of these new, whether it's Youngkin or DeSantis. I think they don't need Trump anymore. They've got their train to fascism, and we can take it from here type thing. And I don't know if it's just because Christie has his book out and he's on this big tour that he's getting all this attention, but I know he wants to kind of reframe the Republican Party, and it's like, dude, if it's you, go for it, because no one likes you.
Well, he did the whole thing without even talking. He did the whole thing about conspiracy theories without even mentioning Fox News. Yeah, that's his entire expose of.
He doesn't watch it. That's what he said. He doesn't watch it. How full of shit is he?
Yeah, doesn't watch Tucker. Died to get on Tucker. Now, this, I think it's going to be Hawley. I mean, Hawley could be another interesting person that they run into.
Yes, it could be Hawley too.
And that kind of stuff just scares me because he is just weird. And, he can't, I don't know, it's hard to trust that guy. But, Christie's, as someone is saying on chat now on Twitter, that he's out to sell his books. Of course, he's out to sell his books, out to make money. They're all out to make money. But while they're doing it, they're destroying democracy. I mean, that thing with Kevin McCarthy last night. I mean, what is wrong with you, dude? You're going to speak for 8 hours to deprive people of health, of childcare? You're going to speak for 8 hours to deprive people of broadband? Like, what is wrong with you? Like, how do you get to the point where you don't feel like you can give kids childcare? and you'd rather just stand in there and talk for 8 hours to stop childcare from happening. It's he's not computing the impact of all of this, and really he was just grandstanding because of what happened the day before.
I think, and I think it's also, I mean, Mark Meadows basically said, oh, we want to make Trump the Speaker of the House, and won't that make Nancy Pelosi crazy? And so I think that McCarthy realizes that he may not be the Speaker of the House. And so he's doing everything in his power to kiss up to Trump and those people. And I think that was also part of the reason he did what he did, to say, look at me, I'm part of you, I'm you guys.
Yeah. I think it's a very valid point. I think he was trying to make himself, very, very useful to them. He was also trying to cover up for the mess the day before and hope people would forget the fact that he allowed Gosar to basically get away with it. He didn't allow Gosar to get away with it, but he supported Gosar in the middle of that censure hearing. I mean, which was a remarkable thing. I got to say, I was blown away by did you watch the whole thing? Did you have a chance to see it? The whole censure show? Oh, it was just, I just thought, well, firstly, it was Nancy Pelosi, right? And she was backed by three women behind her. Like, there was no men behind her, 3 women behind her. And she went at it in a way that you would not really have expected it to be and it's a gender conversation, but she put it in that context, which sort of included everybody in the GOP, because it sort of framed them as being culpable as well. And then she did a phenomenal job. And then, of course, Kevin McCarthy stands up and talks about everything else but Gosar. He looks at inflation and meat prices, you name it. He just talks forever. And then AOC stands up and knocks it out of the ballpark. She's like, what is wrong with you, dude? Always. What is wrong with you that you can't condemn violence against your own colleagues? And it's just, he couldn't get there. He had no response to that. But, still, he still supports Gosar. He still would invite him back as a committee chair. They've made a pact in there. I'm sure they've made a pact that is. Oh, I'm sure. That, everything's okay in the club. Everybody can do whatever they want in the club. Do as much criming as you want. Steal as much money as you want. Be as corrupt as you want. Do whatever it is you need. We'll all just back each other and we'll stop anything from happening. Yes. Because that's the pact. I mean, in fact, Matt Gaetz said if Kyle walked free, he could work for him as an intern or not an intern, but he had a job. Matt Gaetz. I mean, that's ridiculous. The guy killed 2 people and he's getting offered a job by Matt Gaetz. It's just, who's also, questionable on many levels because of his criminal investigation. There is so much on this chat, I can't actually see them anymore because they're running off the screen. But people are saying maybe they'll pick Liz Cheney. Maybe they will pick Liz Cheney. Terrifying if they do, really. Oh, that would be interesting, though. It would. Look, I think she's been amazing. I have as far as I can have a crush on a Republican, this would be a crush that I have on a Republican because it's amazing. Well, I mean, I don't believe. Yeah, it's amazing. I don't agree with anything which she does except for this. Yes, her policies. Otherwise, you have to. I mean, she's lovely on this stuff, and she's been very supportive. But every single other policy that she supports is horrific. Yeah. So before we all, say, isn't she wonderful about absolutely everything, we should consider the fact that maybe Liz Cheney is not sound on her policies. So we're going to do a poll because I can do a poll. So I'm going to show everyone that I can do one. Okay. I think if I press this button, let me try it this way. And you might be able to see it. It's a very interesting question I'm asking people tonight. Okay. Is Kyle Rittenhouse guilty or not guilty from your perspective? Now, we won't even be able to tell if other people are voting in this because it'll stay at 100% because I'm sure no one's going to say not guilty. I might even try. I might push not guilty to see if that changes. So vote away, everybody. You've got until the end of this hour, and then we'll figure out if Narrative's audience agrees with the jury that found Kyle Rittenhouse not guilty today. Kimberly, I don't know very much about you. And I should know a lot about you, but I don't know very much about you. So why don't you tell me a little bit something about you? Like it was like we met sort of in a blind date last time. So now I want to hear more about you. Okay. Well, just real quick, I used to be an actress. Mm-hmm. I was on Days of Our Lives for 7 years. Now I had a small role. I had a role of a police officer. First I was a model, then I was a model, then I was a reporter, and then I was a police officer, and the police officer stuck. And so I did that. I didn't work all the time, but I had. It sounds like you had a lot of roles, though. Well, on that show, because it's funny because consistency on soaps just isn't there. So wait, they would use the same person would not be the same character. It would be the same actress playing different roles. Right. It was the same actress. I was the same. So it was like I think I got hired in December Yeah.
I think it was 95 when I first was on. The next time I was hired was sometime that following spring. So I was a model first, then I was a model again. And then I think like maybe 7 or 8 months later, I was hired as a reporter. And then they hired me at some point later as a police officer, which then I got hired more often because I was part of the police force, but I didn't work all the time. But I was an actor and I did a little bit here and a little bit there. And then I basically decided I didn't want to do that anymore. I studied and I acted for about 10 years. Then I went into outside sales and I did that for about 10 years. I sold I sold giftware, industrial chemicals.
But I want to go back to the Days of Our Lives. You said, was that the show?
Yes.
I love that show. I miss those kinds of soaps.
Me too.
I really do. They were great. You know, they just said something about that whole era of television. It was really difficult to get on those shows. That was not an easy job to get, as far as I know, because those were the kind of jobs that would be consistent.
Yeah, and the way it happened was I was in an acting studio, and basically it was a 2.5-year course. I graduated, and then we continued on to what was called the professional level. We would invite casting directors, and then they would give us scenes, and we would basically just do auditions for those casting directors. So my acting coach knew Fran Bascom, who was the Days of Our Lives casting director, and it was funny because my mother was also an actress, and we were both in that professional level class. So we kept on him, and we were fans of Days of Our Lives. We watched it. My mother had actually been an extra on the show, and so we pushed him, and finally he invited Fran and then Ron, who was her assistant. And when they came, they hired everybody on the show, but my mother got the biggest part. She played a maid to Stefano Demira. So she played Eliana, the maid to Stephanie, and then I was a cop. And she got enough work that she could get insurance through the Screen Actors Guild, which is a big deal. I didn't get as much work as her. But anyway, so yeah, that's basically, we auditioned for them. It was funny, when I went on my audition, I was given sides that it was a storyline from years ago, but I was familiar with it because I had been watching the show since I was 9. So I understood the nuances of that scene, and I was immediately hired. And I was really surprised that they hired me as a model, but they did. And because I wasn't like the skinny little soap opera type. I mean, I'm 6 foot tall. I have big bones. I'm not the typical type. I'm not. So I was actually surprised. But
I can see it. I'm going to just say I can see it. But okay, that's just me.
I know that I could play like the beautiful woman roles when I was younger, but again, Hollywood never saw me as a model. So it was funny to me that a soap opera did. So, and then after I was an outside sales rep, and I mentioned industrial chemicals because it was a fun and interesting and weird job. I worked with primarily like blue collar men, and it was in Los Angeles, and I had a lot of fun, and it was great. But eventually I got an idea to write a book about first-time sex. Nice. And it took me a while to put it together. It's called The Virgin Diaries. Eventually, my mother and I worked on it together. We put it out in 2010, and then 2010 started my kind of like online experience moving into politics. I went into politics in 2012 because Rush Limbaugh attacked Sandra Fluke for being a slut, 3 days on a show, calling her a slut, demanding to see her sex video because she testified in front of Congress that I think it was like private and religious schools should have birth control on their insurance plans. And so Rush Limbaugh went crazy on her, and I wrote an open letter to Rush Limbaugh from a liberal slut. And the guy from Being Liberal, the Facebook page, saw it and put my blog up there, which landed me. I was a blogger, political blogger, I was a feminist, and everything led to right now where I am. So that's
and you took on Rush Limbaugh. Wow. Yeah, I mean, I'm always amazed at how the slut shaming, but I'll say the anything shaming that the Republican Party did for so many years, which was like that's what they did. They were like, we were so religious and we're so much better than you. And now you look at them and you're like, you're the worst people in the entire world. You're doing like the most criminal, corrupt things you can imagine. It's just the hypocrisy never ceases to amaze you. Well, that's really interesting. I'm glad you shared that with us. Thank you very much for letting us into the grand history. And you've got 3 books, right? There's a book about the sex, but there's also 2 other books.
4.
4 books.
I think I did 4. I have The Virgin Diaries, and then my mom and I worked on that together, and then we worked on, it's called Ain't No Sunshine, Men Reveal the Pain of Heartbreak. So that's stories from men about when they are, when they've lost love. And a lot of my friends said that would be a great book because people think men have it easier and they really don't. And so I thought that was a fascinating thing. So we just collected stories from men on
That's really
what
good.
it felt
Yeah.
like to have a broken heart.
Because men
And
don't
then
have
the
feelings,
next one-
That's what they say.
Right. Well, men aren't allowed to have feelings.
It's true.
And like women are allowed to have the feelings, but men, when they go through, a heartbreak, they often feel like they have to keep it inside and they don't have anybody to talk to. And it was fascinating listening to reading the different stories. So we did that one. And then I wrote American Woman, the Pole Dance, was American Woman, the Pole Dance, Women in Voting. It's a little bit about me, a little bit about the history of women's rights. And also I wrote it for my younger self who was not politically engaged, because I thought politics weren't interesting to me because I didn't understand how much they affected everything in my life. So I wanted to write a book for me, really, when I was younger. And then the last book that I wrote was Peyton's Choice, which is about a teenager, 17-year-old who chooses to have an abortion.
I think it's so, what you're saying there about people not realizing how important politics is to them is so crucial, because, every time you go to an election, every time you cast a vote, it actually means so much. Democracy is so powerful and it has such consequences that, not showing up to vote is almost, is almost inexcusable. But at times like this, it's so important that people organize and vote and that they do understand and realize how important democracy is to their world, and we are going to talk about Biff and the other thing, BBB, when we come back after this break, because we don't want to talk about how important it is that you elect the right kind of people, because others you don't get all these nice things like broadband and childcare and all those other things. So that is coming up next. Plus, we'll give you the results of our votes of our poll here. Is Kyle Rittenhouse really guilty according to the narrative audience? That is coming up next. We'll be right back. Oh, no, I can't play that one. I've already played that ad. I've got to play this ad. Talk amongst yourself for 1 second. Here we go. This ad. Hey, everybody. Thank you for supporting Narrative and for supporting our sponsors. I want you to meet the founder of Moink, an 8th-generation farmer who was featured on Shark Tank.
Time for breakfast. My name is Lucinda Cramsey. I was born on a farm and raised on a farm, and I'm an 8th-generation farmer. I wanted to give farmers the opportunity to be financially independent outside of big agriculture.
You can see why I selected Moink as a sponsor for Narrative. It's good for you and it's good for local farmers. Moink delivers grass-fed and grass-finished beef and lamb, pastured pork and chicken and wild-caught Alaskan salmon direct to your door, helping family farms become financially independent outside of big agriculture. Their animals are raised outdoors, their fish swim wild in the ocean, and Moink meat is free of antibiotics, hormones, sugar, and all the other junk you find prepackaged in the meat aisle. Sign up at moinkbox.com. That's moinkbox.com/narrative to get a year of bacon for free, and then pick what meats you want delivered with your first box. Change what you get each month or cancel anytime. And you don't have to take my word for it. Narrative viewers get so excited about their Moink box arriving each month, they tweet at me telling me it's Moink Box Day at their house. And keep doing that. I really enjoy those. Moink meat is so delicious. Narrative discerning viewers love it, and I know you will too. Get Moink Box right now. Join the Moink movement today. Go to moinkbox.com/narrative. That's NARATIV, the way we spell narrative, right now. And listeners and viewers to this show get free bacon for a year. That's 1 year of the best bacon you'll ever taste, but for a limited time. Spelled Moinkbox, MOINK, box.com/narrative. That's moinkbox.com/narrative. Moinkbox, there you go. Such nice people. Actually, I really like her. The whole farm thing that she's got is really genuine, and she's done something really amazing. I mean, she's taking on big agriculture, so I'm happy that she's a sponsor on the show.
Cool.
Yeah, it's a really tough world. Listening to her talk about how farmers have such a hard time, like making money these days. They're feeding all of us, but they can't really feed themselves.
Right.
They have all these competition from big agriculture, which is starving them out of business. But anyhow, that's another day. What should we talk about next? We should talk about two things. The Build Back Better plan, or Bill, the BBBB. I mean, what is wrong with Joe? I love Joe Biden. This is not a criticism of Joe Biden. And it's a great plan. It's an amazing plan. I'm glad the House did it today. I think it was remarkable that Nancy Pelosi was able to. I don't know how she does it. I don't know how she whips those votes.
She's amazing.
But it's kind of amazing. It's out of the blue. Like
she's amazing, yeah.
And she got it apparently precisely correct. Like she got the exact number, which is like Wow.
Right.
That's a lot of people's intentions that you're tracking all the time, and
Yeah.
getting right all the time. So good for her for doing that. And the plan itself is amazing. People get lots of good stuff out of it. There's a lot that's in there that's going to really help everyone's lives. I hope. They keep saying this thing.
I think so.
The bridges are going to take a little longer to make happen, but I think the childcare credit is going to be a big thing. I mean, that impacts everybody. It takes kids out of poverty. It lifts families out of poverty. It's so important. And some of the other stuff that they're doing, which I don't have in front of me, unfortunately, but it's also really powerful. I'm concerned that we're in this sort of like downward spiral on these guys, that there's a thinking that they're going to lose next year, that the Republicans are going to take over, and because they've just jerry-rigged the entire thing or gerrymandered the entire election, and then they'll win. And that's possibly true, but it doesn't have to be that way. These are elections, and this is a democratic system, and it's up to the voters of this country to be enthusiastic about who they want to be enthusiastic about, and also to figure out which side are the good guys and which side are the bad guys. And there'll be ample reason to figure out who the bad guys are during all those January 6th commission hearings, which are going to take place in prime time throughout next year. So for people who are feeling unhappy or disillusioned about the prospects of the Democratic Party, it is not over yet, I don't think. I think there's going to be a lot more still revealed in the next year. We could see significant charges, if not cases, against Trump or any of his other inner cabinet officials and in his inner circle. But also the stuff that's coming out about January the 6th, I mean, it was awful. It was everything we thought it was. It was them basically trying to seize ballot papers and sequester them, and then bring in the military in various states and recall the elections and redo the elections. It's everything that we all thought was going on was actually happening. And with the help of the Russians and the Chinese and God knows who else we might be conspiring with. So that's really what was going on. I think when that is laid bare in front of the American people, I don't know how easy it's going to be for them to vote for the Republican Party next November.
I have a problem. I have a problem with these Democrat. I call them Eeyore Democrats. I don't know if you're familiar with Eeyore, but Eeyore is a So I mean,
he's a donkey, right? He's a donkey.
Right. He's the donkey that is always complaining and never sees the positive.
Right.
And it's like, look, I talked to Allison Gill of Mueller, She Wrote.
Yeah.
And I asked her about this, and she's like, why not take on a winning attitude? And that's the way I look at it. And it's like, people maybe want to argue, well, I don't want to get my hopes up. And it's like, well, look at it this way. No matter what happens, if we lose, you're going to be disappointed. Yeah. Why take on that disappointment and manifest it? Because we do manifest everything that happens. We have a collective that manifests what is happening right now. And so if look, I'm not saying there's no reason to be concerned. There's absolutely reason to be concerned. I've said this so many times, I'm a broken record, but I had the opportunity to live in Moscow in 1981. My father worked for ABC News. I lived in Russia. It was communist Russia. I saw it. And so I recognize that a nation can be too scared to do anything. And people don't necessarily, I know America is not Russia and Americans are not Russians, but at the same time, I think there's this idea like, oh, that'll never happen to us. And you absolutely can happen to us, and it is happening to us. Not communism, but basically fascism.
It can.
Yeah, it absolutely can. And it's happening. It's not all the way here. We have a Democratic president. We have, Democrats have the majority of power, even though it's a slim majority. But I think if we take on the idea like we're going to beat these assholes instead of this slumpy attitude of they always win and the Democrats are so weak. And, I've been going on about messaging, and I'll just say this real quick, that I understand that it's so much easier for Republicans to message because Republican voters always march in lockstep. So many of them initially did not like Trump. And then when he became the nominee, okay, they got right behind him. Our side doesn't do that. We have a much bigger tent. We have libertarians, we have centrists, we have conservative Democrats. So everyone's going to argue and go, well, that's a dumb message. It's like someone will come up with a message and then someone's going to say that's a dumb message. It's harder for us to get on the same page. But I think in this case, so many people have to realize, and this is just going to repeat it, if Republicans take power from us, whether it's legitimately or because they steal it, they're never going to give it back.
It's never coming back.
It's never coming. I saw someone on Twitter say, oh, Republicans screw things up and Democrats will fix it. And I'm like, not this time. Not
No, I
this
don't think they have
time.
any intention of handing back power. I mean, they have already
No.
manipulated the system in every state that is necessary for them to maintain control forever. So they don't have to be, they don't have to be fully fascist. They're just going to be completely undemocratic. They're going to take everyone's right to vote away and then, run the country into the ground. Because the problem is fascism is not just fascism. Fascism comes with a lot of corruption because there's no checks and balances on government. There's no transparency on government. People can do whatever they want because the next election, you're still going to be voting for me because I'm your only choice. So, they get away with murder and crime. And that is why we can't have fascism, and why democracy actually works is because we get a check and balance every 2 years. Plus, we've only got the presidency. There's all these state houses. If you're a Democrat or someone who wants to run in an election and wants a good fight, those are great fights to have. We should be turning those state houses red and blue, and we should be making sure that some of those governors turn blue as well when they're up for re-election, because we should have the winning message. We do have the winning message. There's no doubt in my mind that we have that. I mean, clearly democracy, freedom, equality, all these things, plus a booming economy as it's been every time a Democratic president has been in power, plus general peace and happiness. Those things are good. That's a good thing to sell. You can easily sell that. It's a lot harder to sell, the Donald Trump era to people, but they shall try. I don't know how we turn this around. I do think it's a huge fight, but we just don't have to be so down on Biden. I think this has been the most remarkable week today, maybe even the most remarkable day for any president in living memory, I'd say. It's been unbelievable that he's been able to get this much money dedicated to transforming everyday people's lives, and to do so with just his party. Amazing. And what he hasn't done it yet. He's still got to go through the Senate, but it's still, a remarkable achievement that he's coalesced so many different opinions in a party that's such a wide tent, as you point out, and they've been able to bring people together on stuff that's really going to help you and your neighbors. It's really going to help people get insulin. It's really going to help people go to work if they want to go to work because they get childcare. Like these things that are just so vital, and then lifting kids out of poverty so they have food to eat and are happy, and they can maybe learn more because they've got food to eat. These are incredible things that that he's doing, and they should only be applause for the president and Nancy Pelosi today. Although it's they've been, I'm sure, by now overtaken by the Kyle Rittenhouse story. So that little bloom that they had for about 5 minutes at 1 o'clock today is now officially over. All right, I think we're almost done. What's the time here? We're almost done. We're 1 minute away. We should say goodbye because I've got nothing else to say. What do you have? Do you have anything else you'd like to talk about?
Yeah, well, what I'll just throw out there is if you follow me on Twitter, I'm author Kimberly, and that's Kimberley. And my pinned tweet, I live in Maryland, and so I wanted to do something for the homeless shelter near me. So I'm trying to collect $1,000. So if you could go to my Twitter page and click on it, you can give $5 or $10. I don't see any of that money. It goes directly to the shelter. And it's a PayPal thing where it's once a month it gets distributed into their account. And one day I've raised about $500 and some dollars. That was yesterday.
Amazing.
So and I mean,
good for you.
Whatever I get, I don't get it, but whatever is raised is raised. It goes, like I said, directly to the shelter. Nobody has to worry about me. At first I thought I was going to go shopping with the money and bring it to the shelter, but I found out through GoFundMe, no, they directly deposit it into the place where you choose.
Well, that's really good to know, actually.
Everybody will do that.
Yeah, and that's what a nice thing to do, especially at this time of the year. There's so many people in need, and it's just a really important thing to share with everybody. So thank you, Kimberly Johnson, for being here tonight, and thanks for doing that. And people could find you at Author Kimberly, and they can catch your Start Me Up podcast wherever they get their podcasts. Plus, our audience believes that Kyle Rittenhouse is 90% of our audience believe they're guilty.
I'm surprised some people didn't think he was.
Well, that's why I was interested in the poll. I was interested in and it's a lot of people, and they're entitled to those opinions. But maybe isn't guilty. And that's certainly what the jury found today. Thank you for being here tonight. Really appreciate Kimberly for being here, and thanks also to you for being a part of Narrative tonight. You can always support us at patreon.com/narrative. I will see you again on Tuesday.
Yes.
We have a great show coming up on Tuesday, so don't miss it. And with all that, I'll say good night and have a great weekend, everybody. Narrative is made possible by viewers like you. Join today and support truly independent journalism at patreon.com/narrative. That's patreon.com/narrative.